Bruce Reimer, and welcome to Bruce Reimer's Hot Rodding channel. For those of you who aren't familiar with my channel, Bruce Reimer's Hot Rodding channel is dedicated to building extremely low buck hot rods and customs. For those of you who aren't familiar with my work, I'm best known for the Model A Woody that I built entirely from scratch. You can view the Woody build right here on Bruce Reimer's Hot Rodding channel. Today, on the 7th episode, you'll get a first look at my latest project I've dubbed The Stranger. The Stranger is based on a few builds I've seen where early 60s body styles were chopped and narrowed to create an open-wheeled roadster with a 60s show rod vibe. From the perspective of a low buck hot rodder, this idea is great in principle, but because of the cost of a vintage donor vehicle, not practical. Using these cars as inspiration, I wondered if the principle would translate to a worthless 20-year-old donor vehicle such as my 1990 Ford Ranger. With that in mind, let's have a look at what I've done so far. Here it is basically. What I've done is I've chopped the roof off. I've set the body back about 18 inches on the frame. I've also shortened the frame. The wheelbase, I shortened the wheelbase 1 foot, and then I narrowed the entire body and narrowed the hood. Let's take a walk around here, show you the front end of it. Gives you a basic idea of what I'm doing here. What you can see in this frame is the custom grill that I built. I was going for a kind of an Art Deco look. I wanted something completely original and something that looked sort of retro as well. Yeah, the kind of effect that I want to create here is a 1990 Ranger that was built in the 1960s. So we go around to the left side and get an idea. There's a donor door. Yet to back up and give you a little bit of history of the Stranger project. This truck was a rollover, so it was basically totaled off, which is why it was completely worthless when I acquired it. When I acquired this truck, I already had the idea in my mind. The truck didn't really suit what I wanted to do though, because it was an extended cab and I really wanted a regular cab. But considering the truck was free, I decided, what the heck, we'll take what we got. So I cut the whole back of the cab off and shortened the cab as well. And the box is now also shortened. It's shortened to 48 inches and sits dead center over the rear axle. Also, the front cross member and the front steering was cut off, and it's going to be replaced with a rack and pinion. Oh, I guess we'll want to take a look under the hood, or at least what's under here so far. I've installed a mock-up 351 Windsor that came out of an old truck that I had. It was a core from a truck that I replaced the motor in, and it's going to be backed by an AOD transmission. As you can see, the engine, of course, like everything else, is set way back in the truck from where the engine would have originally been. So of course I made custom motor mounts and also a custom transmission mount, and built a custom floor. Gonna try to utilize the original steering column since it's, you know, basically a bolt-in. should simplify things greatly. And that's about it right now. At this moment, I'm just working on I just finished up filling the cowl screen. So there you have a semi-finished product. The hood was a crazy undertaking, and you'll see later in the video how much work it took to build the hood, and how much work it took to build the entire truck in general. It's so far I'm about 2 years into this project, and I'm basically, as you can see, I'm more or less up to the roughed in bodywork stage. So now I will give you a sort of from start to where the point that I am at now. I'm going to show you a slideshow of the progress. Anyways, I hope you enjoy the rest of this video, and don't forget to like and share and subscribe to Bruce Reimer's Hot Rodding channel. The humble beginning of the Stranger was a wrecked 1990 Ford Ranger I acquired for free, which from the right side of the truck looks pretty good. Then you wander over to the left side and whoa! Instead of giving you a reality TV style teardown, I will spare you the thrashing and a garage floor covered in spare parts to give you what you really want to see, the build. So instead of flying parts, I give you the first modification to the donor vehicle. It was a simple modification, 2 cuts to the frame. Just ahead of the cross member with a plain old hacksaw, removing the front cross member and steering, which will later be replaced by a rack and pinion. The next step was to set the engine and transmission up on blocks so that I could fabricate motor mounts and a transmission cross member. The motor mounts are fabricated from flat stock and 2x2 by 1/8 tubing, utilizing the factory engine mounts. The transmission cross member is as basic as it gets. It's a 2x2 by 1/8 tubing cut to the width of the frame with 4 holes drilled. On to the cab modification, which, as you will see, was the trickiest and most time-consuming part of the build. Before I could do anything, I had to remove the windshield using the age-old wrecking yard method of drawing piano wire through the urethane. Removing the roof required the latest technology. After the roof was off, I removed the rear section of the cab. The removal of the roof included a radical chop to the windshield frame. With no guidelines for narrowing a Ford Ranger to create an open-wheeled roadster, I taped out cut lines to narrow the hood. Reaching for another weapon in my arsenal of high-tech tools, I made the cuts. This would later prove to be an almost complete waste of time, but I had to start somewhere. In this photo, you can already see the discrepancy between the first cut in the cab and the hood. Before I could continue modifying the cab, I had to shorten the extended cab wheelbase from 125 to 113 inches. In order to accommodate the dramatically shortened cab and box, I had to remove a substantial portion of the frame. Note that I also removed part of the leaf spring, which will now serve as a control arm with a coil spring at the rear. After that, I moved the spring mount and sway bar forward 12 inches, marking lines as a guide to relocate the bolt holes. Relocating the spring mount also required removing the cross member just above the original mount location. Finally, I relocated the shock mounts, which required some clearancing. With the frame modification behind me, I continued working on the cab, cutting into the floor and firewall. As difficult as the job looks, this photo does the work involved no justice. After I cut the cab apart, narrowed it, and spot welded it all back together, I realized that it wasn't narrow enough. So I cut the whole thing apart and did the entire procedure a second time. The next step was to convert this into this. I began by removing the extended cab sides and then the floor. And finally chop a section out of the rear of the cab. After several cuts and much trimming, the cab rear was finally ready to weld into place. And here it is, one chopped, shortened, and narrowed Ford Ranger extended cab. How many of these have you seen? With the fenders now in place, note how high the body sits when compared to the following photo. After cutting away the entire floor, I was able to channel the body over the frame 6 inches. At the same time, I cut the front springs to drop it another 2 inches. What a difference. The only thing I salvaged from the damaged box was the sheet metal on the right side. With the much shortened box side attached, the Stranger is beginning to take shape. That's all the time I have for now, but please subscribe to be notified about part 2 of the Stranger build. Right here on Bruce Reimer's Hot Rodding channel.